Isabelle, welcome to the podcast. Very, very excited to have you here.
Happy to be here.
So, we're going to talk about a topic that I have zero familiarity with as far as from the investment side. So, I know what senior housing is, I know what assisted living is. I live in Florida, so you can imagine there's a lot of these places around here. But I didn't actually know that you could be an investor in these things. And so, we're going to dive into that. But before that, I'd love for us to get an intro from you. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we're going to dive into how the heck you got involved in the world of assisted living.
I love it. I'm the COO of Residential Assisted Living Academy. We teach and train investors and entrepreneurs across the world how to own and operate residential homes being used for senior housing. We do it ourselves, and we've been showing other people how to do it for the last 10 years. And it's been a whole lot of fun in the meantime. So I'm excited for all of your juicy questions.
Yeah. So I guess my first one is, how the heck do you get involved in this industry? Like, was this part of the original plan?
Definitely not. My grandmother actually fell and she needed assistance herself. So it became one of those things where all of a sudden you have to make a decision really quickly, and who's going to quit their job and go take care of, grandma? Are we going to put her into a traditional facility? Are we going to get her in-home care? We were just searching for a suitable option for her. And my dad had been a real estate investor, fix and flip, wholesale, buy and hold, everything for 30 years up until that point. So he was familiar with real estate investing, but not senior housing. So it kind of became this thing where he said, wait, I'm going to pay $5,000 a month for her to live in one of these homes, or I could own the home. She could live for free and we could cash flow $10,000 a month. So we just purchased one, not knowing anything about this, making a ton of mistakes along the way, and really just cutting our teeth with the intent to move my grandmother in.
Got it. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So if you can imagine, I have a lot of folks who listen to this podcast who are part of what I call the sandwich generation, where they're figuring out like what they're going to do as far as taking care of their elderly parents, loved ones, but also having the pressure of being parents. And it's just like, oh my God, how do I make a dollar stretch? How do I make sure that mom and dad are good while also like not self-sabotaging my financial goals and also my kids' financial goals? And I think this is one of these areas that causes people a lot of stress about like, what are we going to do when my parents get older and we don't necessarily have the space in our home to have them live somewhere? And maybe the thought of traditional assisted living feels very impersonal, because for Latinos, it's not the most common thing for you to put your family members into a home. It's seen as almost just like, well, why would you do that? They spent their whole lives taking care of you. So what is the benefit to taking this route versus like the traditional options that most people know about?
Unfortunately, many people can't just quit their job and take care of their loved one full time. Like you said, the sandwich generation, they've got kids, they've got parents who are both needing and wanting them at the same time, and they've got to keep up with their own life. And so just quitting your job and taking care of your loved one full time really doesn't make a lot of sense for many families, no matter how much they want to be able to do it. And if you are able to do it, it's an absolute blessing, because it is such a beautiful thing to be able to care for the generations before us. But many financially can't. And I'll also say many physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually can't. Like, I know myself, I'm not born to be a caregiver, and wiping my mom's butt, that doesn't sound like the most dignified thing for our personal relationship. Now I'm no longer a daughter. Now I'm a caregiver. There grows a lot of resentment. There grows a lot of anger. There grows a lot of misunderstandings in that relationship. And it really kind of tarnishes things towards the end of life. So that traditional facility we all know, it does sound terrible, because most of the time it is terrible. And that's not what we do at all. We take single family homes and turn them into senior housing homes. So 6 to 16 seniors living in a luxury upscale residential home in a neighborhood just like the one you or I may have grown up in. 24/7 care, medication management, 3 meals a day. We as, the adult children get a visit as much as we want, and it costs the same, if not less than the facility. And the care is so much better. So for those who can't financially, emotionally, whatever, take care of their loved ones, but don't want to put them in a facility, it's that perfect in-between option.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so take us behind the scenes of what it looks like to be a real estate investor in assisted living. Like, how do you even get started?
Yeah, you can buy a home and renovate it to become a residential assisted living home. You could buy land custom build from the ground up. You could buy an existing RAL, purchasing the real estate and the business. You're up and running, cash flowing day one. Or you could lease a home to use for this. So there's really four ways for you to get started.
Now, my question is for folks who are like, wow, this sounds like a really cool idea, but I don't know the first thing about running this type of business. Like, where the hell do I find the people to actually work at these places?
Yeah, great question. And the person that you're really looking to hire is that licensed administrator. So in the real estate world, it's kind of like a property manager. They're going to be doing your hiring, your firing, your onboarding, training, retention of your care staff, your caregivers. They're also doing the marketing and touring. So they're doing the intake of the new residents. They really run all the day to day within the business so that you, as the owner of the real estate and the business, can just be more of a passive owner. I'm down to like 5 hours a week on my three homes and I visit them like every other month. So we really show people how to do it as passive as possible, but it's not a passive industry. Someone is doing the work. It's just not you.
That makes sense. Okay, so I think a lot of folks are familiar with like buying a piece of real estate to use it as like an Airbnb or as a long-term rental. What are the unique aspects of a residential assisted living facility or a home that you need to take into account, especially from like the physical construction aspect?
You're definitely going to want a larger footprint, meaning 300 to 500 square feet per resident is a good thing. So if you have 10 residents, minimum 3,000 square feet, upwards of 5,000 is going to be very comfortable. You want as many private bedrooms and bathrooms as possible. So you're not really going to be easily finding a home on the market that's a 10 bed, 10 bath, but you could find a 6.5 that's 5,600 square feet and you're renovating it to become a 1010 or something close to that. So a larger footprint, as well as all the other things that you want in your home, a living room, dining room, kitchen. I mean, most of these are luxury homes, so they might even have a little hair salon, a movie theater. All those different amenities and features really help the seniors have a nice environment.
Okay. Now, my next question is around financing, right? So,
Yeah.
what makes the financing process unique for this? And is this typically the type of situation where you'd have like a pool of investors versus a single person, or is it vary?
You can do a syndication where you have multiple investors investing in this from different regards and getting different price points or percentages back on their investments. Or you can get an SBA 7A loan that will cover the home, the renovations, and some carrying costs before you get up and running. So there's a couple different ways you can go about it, as well as traditional funding like a bank loan, private money, hard money, crowdfunding, whatever you want. But we often see SBA and syndication as our two most popular funding options.
Okay. And SBA is a small business loan from the government that is specifically because you're going to open a business with this facility.
Pretty much. Yep.
This is all so very interesting to me just because I feel like this is a hidden world in the real estate realm. So, how did you first discover that this was even a thing?
Well, when we were looking for care for my grandmother, every facility we went into, we were like, this just is terrible. Like, I don't want to leave my goldfish, let alone my grandmother here. And so in Arizona, much like Florida, RALs already existed. You've probably driven by 1,000 of them, every single week. You just don't know because there's no big sign out front. They're a regular residential home. So when we started searching in Arizona, my grandmother lived in upstate New York, but we were in Arizona. We were like, there has to be something different. There has to be something better. And we kind of stumbled into this and realized, whoa, this is a huge industry. There's 30,000 group homes across our country today, of which 3,000 of them are in one county here in Arizona alone, in Maricopa County. Yes. So we had a plethora to choose from, but we realized most of these are being run mom and pop style. The person who owns it lives in the home, works in the home, does everything themselves. After about 7 or 8 years, they start to burn out and say, I need to get out of this business. So there's a lot of them that potentially are available for sale for us as real estate investors, which is a beautiful thing.
Now, I know the value of having a network when it comes to being a real estate investor. So, are there like specific groups or trade organizations or anything like that that focus on this area?
Actually, we invented the only national association that represents all 30,000 of these group homeowners because there was a lot of representation for the big boxes, the Brookdale, Sunrise, Atrium. They have all the money, power, and resources and plenty of events and services for them, but there was nothing representing us smaller guys in the game. So we created the RAL National Association. We've got legal backing and power, group discounts and purchases. We've got state chapters, all sorts of stuff. We host a national convention every single year for all the group homeowners across the country. And then we train people how to do this with the Residential Assisted Living Academy. So we've kind of got all the bases covered no matter where you are in this space.
Wow, that's really interesting. Are there states where this is easier to accomplish versus others? Just because I know there can be a lot of red tape when it comes to zoning laws and all these things that we have to factor into when we're looking at real estate properties.
Definitely. I don't ever want to say one state is easier or the easiest, right? Because people ask that all the time. But there are pros and cons to each state. For example, states like Arizona or Florida, these exist. They're very common. The rules are there. It's not a shock when you go to the department, the zoning department or whoever to say, hey, I want to get this license on this home and do this. They've heard of it. They've been there, done that. So it's maybe easier to get it up and running. But now on one of my care homes, there's 7 other care homes on the same street. So now my competition is tough, right? I'm fighting over a $50 increase, decrease for caregivers to attract residents, you name it. It becomes a tougher market versus our students who are in the Northeast, New Jersey, where there was 8 of these. When our student Brian got started, he opened his home. He had a waiting list right away. So it just depends. It may be more difficult to get it up and running, but easier in the long run because once you're up, you're one of 8, and now people are begging to come in. So there's pros and cons to everywhere.
Okay. Do you guys work with like government benefits and things like that for paying the fees for these facilities? Or do you guys just take it's a private money basically?
Most of the residents are private pay. If they have long-term care insurance, only about 10% of the population does, but that's a great way to pay for your care needs. But government funding only pays out at about $1,800 a head. So the average cost of care in our country today is $5,350 per resident per month. So $1,800 does not cover much. I mean, the homes that are accepting that, you're eating rice and beans and hot dogs, you're being cared for, one person's taking care of 50 people. The quality is rough there. So do not rely on government funding to take care of you. I mean, we all know that, but it's true and it gets scary at the end of life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious for you, what's been the most rewarding part of this journey? I can imagine that you get to know that you're providing safe housing for folks who typically, you hear a lot of these horror stories where elders are being abused and they don't have an advocate on site and you just don't even know what the hell's going on a lot of the times.
Yeah, honestly, the horror stories we hear are each one gets worse and worse and worse. Unfortunately, it's not getting better. And with the silver tsunami of seniors coming, we're currently 1.3 million beds short. So it's only going to get worse. This is a massive crisis that our country has. And I'm tired of hearing the sob stories. I don't want anyone's grandparent to go through this, anyone's parent to go through this anymore. There's such a better option with residential assisted living. And that's what I love to show people how to do so that those seniors get such a better quality of life. The caregivers have a better quality of life as well. When they're working in a big box facility, it might be 30 seniors to one caregiver. In our homes, it's 4 to 1 or 5 to 1. So they're getting paid the same and they get to hang out in a mansion, get fed 3 meals a day and get to hang out with much less seniors where they can actually feel good about doing their job. And then the third thing that I think is most rewarding is helping other investors do this, because so many people come to us and they say, my mom needs this, my dad needs this, or I don't trust that my kids are going to be able to take care of me in the way that I want and need and deserve at the end of life. And they're making a plan for themselves. They're cash flowing now all the way until someone else needs care or till when they need care. And then they can pass a blessing to their children, not a burden. And that's a beautiful thing too.
Yeah, I love that. So for folks who are in the position where they know they're going to have to plan for something like this? Let's say they have siblings. How do you bring up the conversation, right? Because this is another awkward thing. Like, what are we going to do with mom and dad? How do you have that convo?
Honestly, everyone should start having that convo if they have not had it, because if you are the wealthy one in your family, odds are you're going to be the one paying for care. The cost of care has gone up 84% over the last 20 years. Like, it's only getting worse. There's a website, genworth.com/cost of care. When you go there, you can type in the area that you live or where you invest and see what the average rates are in your area. Right now, Arizona is pretty on track with the US average, about 5,500 per month. But my mom's not going to need care for 25 years. When I go to that website and I use the toggle button and I bump it up 25 years, we're talking $17,000 a month for my mom when she needs care. So it was an easy conversation for me and my siblings to say, who's going to be able to afford this? Let's not even worry about that. Let's start a care home where she can go live. And now we don't have to stress about it. And we get a cash flow until she needs it. She gets to live for free. We're basically saving ourselves from this. So if it's not a conversation you've had, it's time to start, because if you are the responsible sibling in your family, it's probably going to fall on your shoulders.
Yes, we have a lot of responsible siblings that listen to this show. So I know they're like, oh, okay, you're talking to me. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can imagine that some folks who are maybe more risk averse can see this business model and they're just like, this sounds like a very high liability business. We're dealing with folks who might have chronic illness, disabilities. Like, how do you protect yourself from that as a real estate investor?
They're not moving into assisted living for fun, right? They're moving in because it's no longer safe for them to live at home alone. Maybe their dementia has progressed too much, or they need help with 3 to 5 activities of daily living. So they cannot be home alone anymore. This isn't like you're moving in to get better. It's not like PT in that sense. 90% of the people will pass in the home, and that is okay. The families are aware of that. The seniors are aware of that. This is end of life care. The typical stay is 3.5 years. So it's not like it's a quick thing. They're staying for a while and they're getting that care for a while. I want them to stay forever, right? But when it comes to liability, it's not necessarily that people are upset when their loved one passes on. I mean, if you're paying $6,000 a month for your loved one and they pass, part of it is kind of a relief, because when an older person passes, you are like, they lived a good life. Like, I don't want them to suffer. I don't want them to go through these health issues. And I'm saving $6,000 a month, not to be crass, but many of the adult children, this is what they're thinking at this point. Liability on the sense of slips and falls and things like that. Gravity works the same at their home, at Target, and at your care home, right? We can't change gravity. So you need to do as many things as you can to keep the home senior safe. It doesn't need to be ADA compliant, but you want to be as close to that as possible. So ramps, guardrails, handrails, smooth, clean floors, no carpets or trip hazards. All those things are going to be good. Having cameras in the home, and then of course, liability insurance, right? It's about $2 to $3 per day per resident. So if you had 10 residents, $900 a month, it's a line item. Definitely something you want to have, definitely something you need, but nothing to break the bank over.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So tell us about your residential assisted living academy. What can folks expect when they find out more? What are you guys teaching in there, basically?
We are teaching A to Z how to get started in this. We go through those 4 methods we talked about earlier. We show you how to find the home, fund the home, and fill the home. We talk about memory care versus assisted living. We break down some of our students' homes across the country. So you're getting a virtual tour inside 7 different homes all across the country. You're seeing their numbers, all the renovations and different things that they've done to make it up to code. And then we're having a lot of fun. I'm the lead instructor, and everyone else who's there teaching with me, they were past students in class who went out, got homes up and running, and now they're back to teach and train step by step how to do exactly what all of us did.
That's amazing. Where can we find out more?
RAL101.com is a great place to go to download a free webinar, get a free book, or schedule a call with me or the team.
I love it. I think this is going to spark so many interesting conversations in people's homes, because this is one of these things that we're all going to have to confront at some point. We're going to have to face the reality that we're going to be a caregiver in some capacity. And I think this is a really innovative way to not only make it advantageous to the person that you want to care for, but also to the people who are responsible, right? So I'm so curious about the work that you do. I'm going to keep investigating and learning more about this. And I encourage y'all as well, because there are options out there, and folks like you, Isabelle, are giving us options to consider that might be completely aligned with, you know, what you envision for caretaking for your family members. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.